I'd like to welcome you to the Middle Tennessee Cyber Conference. Today we're going to be interviewing Christoper Bulin. Christopher has worked for companies such as EMG, NCR Merchant Solutions, and ClearPay Financial Solutions. In June of 2020, Christopher launched Cyber Payments, the idea of cybersecurity and payments under one house. Cyber Payments was acquired by CardZen, LLC, an ISO in Las Vegas, Nevada, in June 2021. In February 2021, Christopher and his team launched Proven PCI, which allowed them and their growing team to focus on the second rendition of Proven PCI. Proven PCI is a technology company serving merchant service providers and independent sales organizations. As the founder and chief visionary officer of Proven PCI, their goal is more than just helping merchants eliminate non-compliance fees. Their goal is to provide proof of the box being checked. Christopher, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Steve.
And Christopher, I'm sorry I kind of worked my way through that. You appear to be a very, very busy man.
I've got probably 100 things going on. I still represent CardZen to a degree in regards to submitting deals, and then also building Proven PCI to where we want it to be for launch. So
now, Proven PCI, and today we called you in because we're actually looking at PCI-DSS, and as PCI moves into their fourth iteration, is that correct, sir?
Correct. Well, probably it's the fourth version.
Now, when we look at compliance, we have several questions we're going to run by you today. And, one of the biggest things is when folks decide that they're going to take credit cards in their business, regardless if they're small, medium-sized business, or they're a large enterprise, then they're going to have to go through this PCI compliance. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's one of the, I think, it's one of the unspoken things in the payments industry. A lot of merchants, I remember, signing merchants early on, and people would always ask, what's the cost of getting set up to take credit cards? Like, what is the cost to take credit cards? And, years ago, we would just talk about either the application fee or the terminal or the percentage and the transaction fee, and base it off of their volume. But now I think we have to take a look at it in regards to saying, okay, well, there's other costs involved, right? Do you have a network set up? What's your infrastructure like? How are you taking payments? And then we have to figure out the costs associated when it comes to PCI compliance.
And when we look at PCI compliance, we move into that cybersecurity realm, and not just that realm, but it's the individual process, which is ongoing from the point that they begin taking credit cards, and they're having to go back and continuously become
correct, right?
And they have to stay compliant. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So PCI compliance. I've always, and I've guys kind of coined this phrase. I don't know if I picked it up from somewhere else or not, but PCI, as it stands right now, the way it's currently handled, is for small businesses. It's a moment in time. Right? It's a snapshot. Small businesses have to self-identify the proper questionnaire, which there's 9 of them. And then from that point, after self-identifying, they have to go through anywhere between 30 to 300 plus questions. And those questions, you're looking at procedural and technical, right? So the more procedural and technical, for the most part, you can kind of automate with some things, right? With some different technologies. But procedural is habit. It's human interaction. And so most small businesses, the way they're attesting, they're checking a box. They're going through a wizard that's provided not from the credit card processor. The credit card processor has a relationship with a larger organization, and they've created these wizards. And these wizards, the business owner has to self-identify the proper questionnaire. But then after that, they have to go through all of these questions. And right now, they just check a box.
And when they go through and they're just checking these boxes, if they see something, and this, of course, not to answer on behalf of everybody, but if they were to check no, that they don't do something, they would not be allowed to take credit cards. Is that correct?
Would they be allowed to take credit cards? They'd still be allowed to take credit cards.
Even if they say no to something.
There's no checks and balances. There's no, right? If they failed their PCI SAQ, They may get hit with a non-compliance fee. They may be told to do something to remediate it, to fix it. But after that, once they pass, they're done. Like, they've eliminated the non-compliance fee. They're not going to get charged anymore for non-compliance. And they could have a breach tomorrow and be completely out of compliance. Because right now, the way PCI is done, it only takes a snapshot of a moment in time. It's not continuous. It's up to the business owner to maintain the continuous compliance.
Right.
But small business owners, and I don't want to say they don't understand, because they weren't trained to understand. Right? They weren't informed properly.
They're more focused on their business than they
Correct.
see credit cards is going to be the means that we use today.
Correct. And they think that a lot of small business owners think that it's our job as payment providers to do their compliance for them. And it's not our job. It's written in their contracts. All of their terms and conditions state that when they sign their contract, they are going to maintain the rules and requirements for PCI DSS. It's written in their contract.
And then that's pretty much over at that point, because there's no check and balance.
Correct.
So if they don't do anything technical, if anything changes with their infrastructure or how they're taking those credit cards, there's no checks and balances. It's just amazing that would be in place. So let me ask you. You mentioned a term, SAQ, and
Correct.
What exactly is that SAQ for listeners?
So SAQ stands for Self-Assessment Questionnaire, and according to Visa's website, businesses that qualify for an SAQ are what they have it broken out into different levels, level 1 through level 4. A level 1 merchant is merchants processing over 6 million transactions annually across all channels, or global merchants identified as level 1 by Visa. Those have to fill out a ROC, which is a report on compliance, and they have to go through a qualified security assessor, right? So you're looking at larger organizations. I mean, 6 million transactions a year is quite a lot across all channels. Now, when it comes to the SAQ, which is a self-assessment questionnaire, they have to submit an AOC, and this is all done electronically back to the processor, but that consists of anywhere from 6 million transactions across all channels or less. Sorry about that, notifications. 6 million transactions or less, and those qualify for an SAQ, which is a self-assessment questionnaire. And those are our target. That's what our target market is.
Okay.
So,
well, the mom and pops and the medium-sized companies, do they go through this self-assessment too? Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So what happens is when you sign up for a merchant account, you go through underwriting, your account gets approved, you get installed, and you should be installed by a qualified integrator and reseller, somebody which is called a QIR. They're the only ones that are actually qualified to do an install, especially when it's touching anything like your computer or a point of sale system or anything that's going to touch your network at all. Should be done by a QIR. And you can get certified by that through PCI's website. But once you get installed, or your account's approved and you're installed and so forth, you're notified by a third party that's tied to the credit card processor that you're with. And what they do is they contact you and say that, hey, you need to get your PCI certification done so you're not charged for non-compliance.
And what type of training is happening at this point? Are there tools?
Training?
Yeah.
Or what, the merchant?
Sure.
No, they have to log into a portal.
And they're answering those questions, but are there training and tools that they're required to go through?
No, not ahead of time. Not ahead of time, not after, nothing.
So the amazing part is in 2021, coming up on 2022, you can't even guess the number. 99% of us are not using cash. We're using debit cards and credit cards with merchants that have answered a SAQ that a lot of times do not have checks and balances. And the training that they receive is only if they use tools that's in a portal and they can.
Yeah, I mean, the tools are there. There's plenty of tools like on PCI DSS's website for small businesses. I mean, you could search small business tools and things like that, but most small businesses, right, as a small business owner, you're in charge of your inventory, you're in charge of employees, you're in charge. I mean, no different than any C-level position, but you're just trying to get through day to day, right? You're just trying to get the sales in for the day. You're not worried about like my network. I can't even afford my network. Like network, what are you talking about?
And
Like,
wouldn't you even say that even some medium-sized businesses that use MSPs and people where they may contract out their IT and their cyber, if they're accepting credit cards, they may even go through the same process and not truly
yeah,
be compliant?
you know, when it comes to these questions are written in a format that like the average general person, you have to dissect it. I mean, I've plenty of times going through the PCI program, we've had to reach out to advisors or security professionals like, what does this mean? Because it's not written in plain language. It's not written in everyday language. I think somebody from a cybersecurity background can decipher it a lot easier than somebody that isn't from the cybersecurity, has any background from cybersecurity. But at the same point, I've locally run into plenty of IT companies locally and asked, hey, would you help my merchants with their PCI compliance? They're like, nope, I don't want nothing to do with it. And it's
And have you
because
reached out in some MSPs and I mean, without naming them, of course, who have
they don't
actually
want to focus
not
on it
known
because
what PCI is at
they know
all?
what it is. They know that like it's you know, you have to close this port. You want everything locked down. You want it segmented. You want um, just you're supposed to close all your ports, right?
Right.
Because if if for however a business is taking credit cards, we have to do a vulnerability scan, whether it's an internal or external. We need to make sure that you can't get to the cardholder data, right?
Right, where they're
Well,
splitting
from
it
an
on
MSP,
VLANs, they have firewalls in place, they have closed all the ports that they're supposed to. It's
but from an MSP
segmented.
standpoint, right? I need to keep it a port open because I need to troubleshoot
Right.
virtually. I need to troubleshoot virtually, so I need to keep XYZ port open, right? And so, but PCI says no, right? And you can't have it both ways.
Right.
And so, I've heard it. Whether I'm not naming companies, but I've heard about it. But it's where plenty of IT companies, they'll close down all the ports. They'll wait for the provider to run the scan, and then they'll reopen everything up again. Well, now you're out of compliance. They just do it.
And what happens in the event that there is a breach and an audit comes in, a PCI audit? What possibly could happen?
Business could end up shutting their doors because they're not in compliance.
So, because they would no longer be able to take those credit cards.
Well, they can still take the credit cards, right? You can still process credit cards, no problem. But they're not running a secure environment.
I gotcha. And the breach alone is going to harm their reputation.
Oh yeah, I mean it'll create distrust. It'll create lashback. I mean, you could, you know, we've heard of the problem is when it comes to public data for small businesses. Good luck. I mean, it's so you can't find it because they're privately held companies, right? And so to find public information on them, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. Now, if it comes up to larger organizations, right? Target, right? Everybody knows about the Target breach back in the early 2000s, but that was because of another service provider, which was an AC company, had, you know, and they had a breach, right, which leaked into the Target, you know.
Because
so
the AC actually was not on a different VLAN, or it was not separated or segmented away. They were able to come through that HVAC system to actually.
And that's why small businesses need to make sure that their third-party providers are also compliant and following the rules of PCI, right? And so there's a lot of things that small business owners need to do, but right now they just check a box saying that we have it.
I mean, you know, it's so odd to hear that and know from someone like you, or hear from someone like you, that this process goes on, and while they come out with these different iterations and they listen to what people say, we're still going through this process that basically we can walk through a wizard still be allowed to take those credit cards. It's just amazing. But and again, just to ask you, what percentage would you just guesstimate of merchants are not truly PCI compliant?
I'd say less than 10% of businesses are compliant. I would honestly I'd have no problem saying that. I could probably walk into any business locally here and say, hey, and if we did an assessment, see if they're compliant, they're probably not, because they're missing something. It could be a matter of, let's see, having all of your service provider contracts in place, right? Just know, do you have access to all of those? And do you know what they take care of and what they don't take care of? It's as simple as that.
That's not even going into the technical realm. That's just on that.
That's just a piece of paper. That's just a piece of paper.
It's amazing.
Do you have, or simplest one, right? There's plenty of free programs out there. Are you offering security awareness training to all your employees, including the janitor?
And that's included with PCI compliance.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the requirements, depending on which
that goes from small to large businesses, of which your large businesses may have that type of security awareness.
Your large businesses, right? If they're running any type of C-suite or anything like that, 6 million transactions annually a year or more, they have that covered because they can pay for it, right? They have it in-house. They have a CISO. They have a technical department. But you're small, and that's why even to the point virtual CISOs are becoming more and more popular. But for a small business, they're costly. They're expensive,
right?
And we get into the fear battle in regards to selling on fear because, well, it's cheaper to pay for us than to pay for if they were to ever have a breach. Well, yes, that's true, but we in the payments industry, we've been scaring businesses into getting compliant for the longest time because we have non-compliance fees, right? It's a scare tactic. Scare tactics don't work. They just don't. You can't scare the population into doing something.
So right now, what could a small business, a medium business, the people that do not have these people that can take care of PCI compliance, what can they do right now to get in compliance?
I think the biggest thing that they can do is really a lot of self-education.
Right.
And I hate saying it that way because no business owner is going to want to have to read more documentation or going through things. It's as simple as there's 3 major things that cause breaches, right? And depends on who you talk to, you get different answers, right? But it's passwords. Change your password. It's really that simple, right? Now, granted, I'm not saying, yes, a complex password is a capital P password with 1 exclamation point, but it's got to be a complex password, right? Something that use a password manager. You should be using multi-factor authentication on everything. And multi-factor includes being something you are, something you know. What was the other one? Steve, you should help me out with this. I'm losing my mind. And something you have, right? And so you should be able to do multi-factor authentication. Password manager, patch it, right? I know that I have an iPhone, and I hate doing the update on an iPhone because I know something's going to go wrong with my phone. It's either going to lock me out for a couple of days, or I'm not going to be able to use the program. But when you look into the iPhone updates and you can pull it up and it says that it's fixing security bugs, like, do that. If it's just an update where because it's new features, I can wait on that. But if it says security, I'm going to update it. You got to do patching.
And then you get into those small and medium-sized businesses where they do have multiple computers that are networked, and they're not separating that that credit card input device, whatever it may be. And because they're not doing that, they're not going to be in compliance. But should they just have a separate internet just for it?
Yeah, they should. I definitely agree with that. I think that they should be running it.
If they're going to offer their customers free Wi-Fi, generally they're going to have one internet bill.
Right, you're going to have Comcast or something else, and you're going to have a Wi-Fi signal, and then you're going to have your internet, right? And
it's all being plumbed into one. But in reality, they should actually separate it, and not to get uh, super technical, even though we have an audience of people that are technical and people that are not. But a small business firewall,
Yeah, I would, but I would call it one of your local providers to set it up. I mean, I wouldn't go buy one at Best Buy or anything like
right?
that. I mean, I wouldn't buy one locally and then think that you're going to be able to figure it out. I would contact somebody that's certified, and contact somebody locally. There's plenty of MSP companies locally, whether
And
it's
and,
Nashville, Memphis,
and this
whatever.
is and this is for future businesses and people that are currently in business. If they follow these guidelines, it's an ongoing process that they need to check. Just
Correct.
like you were saying, they would need to patch any mobile devices, patch their routers, and if they don't know how to do it, they need to call in someone to do this for them.
I would highly recommend. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to spend the money, but it's for managed security is what you're paying for.
Right, and
Um,
they also need to keep up with what PCI, the iterations, the changes, if they go through that attestation and look at those wizards and make sure that they follow
well,
every single point.
and that's one of the things too, right? Is to so if you look at PCI DSS in regards to things and the SAQs, and I'm going to take the year 2019 to 2020. You're supposed to go through a vulnerability and a penetration test, depending on the type of how you take payments. Well, it says that the most times when you're supposed to do that is when you have a change in how things are done. Well, tell me what business in 2019 didn't go from retail to online,
Oh yeah, right,
right?
absolutely.
And I'm assuming the majority of them didn't go through a vulnerability test or a penetration test. It was a major change to their network, and they went all online. And so um, there's a lot of holes in regards to a lot of small businesses that are probably, like I said, 90% of them are not compliant, just from a daily aspect of things, right? Um, but also didn't go through those. They're supposed to go through their SAQ again,
Oh
and most
wow.
of them
Okay.
they haven't.
Yeah, and you've got to think about network changes. People simply changing their provider or moving their PC or moving to a different network. And of course, that's on the technical end, but keeping up with that compliance, reading
It's
um,
a lot.
the
I mean,
changes, it's a lot more than people think,
well,
by all
it's a
means.
lot to do. It's a lot to process, and I can see why most small businesses think it's the credit card processor's job. But again, just like they're not trained from cybersecurity standpoint, as payment providers, us as agents, we're not trained on it either. Like there's some training out there for us, but if we want to get training onto it, we'd have to dive into a whole new field. And most of us as agents, like we're 1099 commission. And so, or even if we're an employee for a company, our job is to sell merchant accounts after that and service them. After that, like we don't get into the technical aspect of things.
Right.
I remember working for, EMG years ago, and if it ever came to doing an install on a computer, we weren't to touch the system at all. And nowadays, it's either we do the install or the client has to do the install over the phone with somebody. But you don't know if that person's certified to do anything.
Hmm.
It's
I
just
mean, there's a lot of information on this. And one of the things, um, be- one of the things that we're actually looking at now is we as a society are moving to all digital. We're going to be accepting more and more credit cards, and
great.
you can't even believe that today. Whenever I talk to people, people just don't handle cash anymore. So as these merchants move either online or they have molded to the pandemic where they went online, this ongoing process, is it like a domino effect, or how should, from point A all the way to whatever, where would they find the outline for all this other than PCI? Where are they going to get the expert that they need to help guide them?
I really don't know in regards to where they're going to find the expert in regards to things. I mean, I know what we're building and what we're trying to build in regards to things. Um, but I've never considered myself an expert just because I'm always learning in regards to it, and it's always changing. So it's always trying to keep up with everything. Um, but reach out to Honestly, I'd start with the PCI DSS website. You can find anything and everything there. And let me see if I can just pull it up real quick. Hey, can I share my screen real quick? Just
Sure,
pull it up.
absolutely. Let me give you a little permission to share your screen, sir. And you can do that. Go ahead.
Do this one. All right, so this is the actual PCI website. So when you come to the PCI website, and this is where I go for everything. You can type in, there's plenty of other sites that are out there for PCI, but once you see who they're hosted by, if they're hosted by another MSSP company, it's because they want to steer you to that direction. This is the actual website. It's PCISecurityStandards.org. And you can, if you're looking for an assessor, you can find assessors for everything. You can type in here for, let's say, small business essentials. And hopefully we'll get it. There we go. PCI data evaluation tools for small merchants. There is plenty of information here, all for small businesses. It's geared towards that. Data security essentials evaluation tool to figure out how you're supposed to, what credit cards you're taking, things like that. Guide to cipher payments, common payment systems, questions to ask your vendors. This is a perfect one. This is one that I can't highly recommend enough. These are questions you should.
So where does the failure point come that you feel where people are not compliant? Is it more on the technical side, or is it more on this side, or is it both?
I think it's both. You guys are where people are where the ball is being dropped. So I guess, our goal for Proven was to provide proof to what was being checked, right? A lot of small merchants are saying yes to things, but they don't know what they're saying yes to, right? I mean, I can go sit in my garage. It doesn't make me a car,
right?
Or I could move to Nashville. It doesn't make me a resident of Nashville. So a lot of people are just checking the boxes to avoid the non-compliance fee that merchant service providers are charging them. But if they don't have it in place, they're running the risk of a breach happening because you're just checking a box, right? And we as the payment companies, we're just saying that, hey, their certification is good enough. This is all we need. What we're trying to do with Proven is provide proof, right? I mean, it's in our name, Proven PCI. Provide proof to the requirement actually being met. And it's a lot of re-education.
Right.
It's more of, I belong to a group on LinkedIn called Payments Revolution. And we've kind of branded ourselves as, payment providers with a purpose, trying to re-educate a lot of things, moving things in the industry. I focus on compliance. There's somebody else on there that focuses on the rules of NACHA, which are taking checks, right? Acceptance of checks. There's another lady on there. She runs an ISO out of Alpharetta, Georgia. And, she talks a lot about in regards to collaboration and helping merchants out and making sure that their jobs are easier. And that we're truly serving our merchants. I mean, that we're in the merchant services industry. The job is to serve the merchants. That's what our job is. And a lot of us, there's a lot of snakes out there that they're just doing it to sign the deal, and that's it.
Gotcha.
So it's a major ecosystem, I think, in regards to, I guess I would call it the payments ecosystem. And my goal has always been to bridge that gap between the cybersecurity side of things and the payment side, because we're so intertwined, and we don't realize it. We could be getting referrals from one another and passing referrals back and forth from one another just by focusing on the same client.
And one of the things we're certainly going to do is, because there's going to be a million questions off of this, is we're going to put your contact information, and of course this is going to appear on YouTube, it'll be on Twitter, it'll be on Facebook. But to educate the listeners today, the biggest thing is going to that PCI site, going through all of those individual tools, contacting experts like yourself, and then to come into compliance so that the risk of having that breach on a technical aspect and being in compliance as far as paperwork and policies and everything, so it will come all together. So, you know, to come out of this is people truly need to go back, look at what they attested to whenever they chose to be a merchant, and then
Well,
find those people. Is that correct?
well, yeah, and I think you hit it on the head, right? So it's taken apart the verbiage with a lot of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when people fill out their self-assessment questionnaire, at the end of it, they're asked to sign off on it, like sign on it, right? And what you're doing is it's called an AOC. It's attestation of compliance. Well, if you look up the word attest, it means truth. It means it's no different than a small business hiring an employee and you looking at the candidate and he fills out the job application. And before he signs off and before you interview him, he's attesting to all the information on that job application is truth to the best of his knowledge. That's the same thing small businesses are doing, but a lot of times they're being coerced into signing it because fear of a non-compliance fee. And that's why even I wanted to make sure I mentioned this, but from our team, not proven, but from our partners team with CardZen, their staff is QIR certified, right? So they're certified to do installs, right? And so that's the one thing, like you asked for, where can small business owners go? And I'm not trying to be selfish in regards to this, but I would recommend call CardZen, especially when it comes to your merchant account, and then to be properly installed.
Right.
I asked Josh, my partner, to go get certified for it. So when we're doing installs, that we're doing them by the book.
Exactly. So we'll put your information there, and we may very well have a live question and answer later, because I'm certain that we're going to get those questions. And is there anything you'd like to say as we tie this up today?
No, I'm good. I definitely, like I said, I appreciate the opportunity to speak again, just to try to re-educate, whether it's small business owners, consumers. It's got to be a joint effort. It can't be one party. It's got to be a collaboration. And it has to be a lot of people, a lot of voices working together. But at the same point, we can't scare people into doing things. Like it's gotta come from a place of sincerity. And truly watching out for, it's me watching out for Steve and Steve watching out for James. And you have to watch out for everybody, right? And so, but it has to come from re-education. It has to. So.
Well, Christopher, thank you again. And certainly we'll put that information, underneath this video, okay?
I appreciate it. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it.
Yep.